Hi everyone, Adrian here, welcome back to Wild Bush and Grit, and this video is targeted to the novice who decided that he wanted to take it to the outdoor and start fishing. I want this episode to be your one-stop video from knowing nothing about fishing to landing your first fish. So I have a lot of topic to discuss. You can jump from chapters to chapters. I'm not making this video with the presumption that I know everything and tried everything, of course not. I'm just saying, what works for me, the experience I had, the thing I stopped doing, the thing I started doing, and the thing I wish I knew when I started. So that's the philosophy driving this video, okay? Okay, so about angling, so the two main category of angling, the two main technique of angling, so to speak, are fly fishing or spin fishing. Usually when you fly fish, you'll do it with a reel like this. This is a fly fishing reel. And if you're spin fishing, you'll do it with something that is going to look like this, okay? Or that. And this changed everything. It's changed the type of bait that you're going to use. It's changed the type of rod that you're going to use. I will not cover fly fishing with this video. I think fly fishing has its own, it's its own thing. It's a true art form. It's extremely rewarding once you land a fish with a fly, but it's definitely easier to catch fish while you're spin fishing. Why I don't recommend a new angler to start with fly fishing, it's just one, it's more expensive, it's technically harder, you will not land as many fish as if you were spin fishing, and it is beautiful. I love fly fishing, but I don't think it's the best entry into the fishing world. I would recommend you to get maybe a year or 2 years spin fishing before getting into fly fishing. Now, that being said, of course you can start straight away with fly fishing, but just know that the learning curve is very steep, and a lot of the knowledge that you can acquire while you spin fish, while you're having fun spin fishing, can be absorbed by that spin fishing before you actually move to fly fishing. And so that's just my opinion. So yes, you could completely start with fly fishing, but that's not the video for you if you're looking for fly fishing. I'll surely cover fly fishing at some point. I'm going to add the link, but I want this video to focus exclusively on spin fishing because I believe it's a nice entryway into the angling world to most people. Okay. All right. So that's a reel for fly fishing, and this is a reel for spin fishing. So when I'm talking about spin fishing, you will use this type of reel. You have multiple type of spin fishing reel. So you have an open spin fishing reel like this. You have a closed one also like this. I highly recommend you to start with the open spinning reel. And while the closed spinning reel is easier to use, I'll usually keep this one for guests that usually don't fish often, or kids, children, and they're great. They're very easy, simple to operate. And me, when that's my dirty secrets, but I like to give this reel to beginner because I'm not spending my time with them entangling them and teaching them how the reel works. So they can, I just give that to them. It's like 10-second crash course and they're ready to fish. Well, this one is a little bit more tedious, and you have a little bit more opportunity to create bird nest, but I still highly recommend you to start using with open spinning reel, and the reason is you will quickly outgrow the closed reel and you have much more flexibility using an open reel. Okay, you can cast further, and it's overall, yes, this is what you want to start with. Later, when you're getting more, when you've gained some experience, you might want to try something a little bit more specialized, which is a bait caster that I have here. And this is great. It has it's first, the size of it, the weight of it, and the casting distance and the precision of your cast is also increased when you use a reel like this. All right. This is the hardest to use though. It's not simple at all. You need to balance the break inside. It's super easy to create bird nest with that, and you don't want to spend your day, if you're fishing in the weekend, you don't want to spend your day entangling bird nest all day long. All right, so I do not recommend you to start with a bait caster like this. But for your first reel, open spinning reel is what I highly recommend. In terms of brands, there are great brands out there. Me, personally, what I use here, this is a Okuma, and this is a Daiwa. I never had an issue with any of them. They works great. There are other brands out there, I'm sure you can find, but I think the Okuma are fairly priced. The Daiwa as well are fairly priced and good quality for what it is. I don't have experience with all the reels, so I cannot, be adamant on this or this brand, but these two brands always worked for me. I have multiple Daiwa and Okuma. Alright, so let's talk about fishing lines. So you have 3 types of fishing lines available today in most store. The first one, the most widely known and mostly available, most of us started using the monofilament. The monofilament is the cheapest of all the fishing line that are offered today. And if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend a lot of money, then you can skip to the next chapter, go monofilament. You can't go wrong with it. It's still a great product to use. But I think we've made some progress and we have new alternatives today that are of course pricier, but with great benefit as well. So that being said, monofilament, yes, you will catch fish. I caught plenty of fish with monofilament, and I've only swapped recently, in the latest year. So as I was saying, it's the cheapest, but it's also the thickest in terms of strength to size ratio, okay? This means that you will have less line on your reel, and it's also going to affect your casting capability. So among all the line that, among the 3, this is the one that you will have less distance. To me, distance means a lot because it's also accessibility, right? Usually the fish are not coming to us, we're getting to the fish. And if you cannot cast where the fishes are, you might not catch fish that day. So having the capability of casting further will increase your chance of getting fish. So it will resist to abrasions. It has a lot of stretch, so if you're fighting a big fish, that line will be more forgiving. It will stretch, and you're less likely to lose a fish using monofilament. Remember that the size, the diameter of that line makes it heavier, makes it thicker. When you're casting, that bait or that lure that you added at the end of the line is pulling out the line out of your reel. But the heavier it is, it's going to slow down your bait, right? And it's not gonna go as far as it could have been if you were using a smaller, lighter line. All right. The second line we can discuss is the fluorocarbon. Now, the fluorocarbon is, I believe, the most expensive of all, and I use fluorocarbon specifically for a leader, and I'm going to explain what's a leader is. Some people use fluorocarbon all the way, their entire setup is fluorocarbon. It's fine. Me, I prefer my main line is actually braid. So fluorocarbon, the most expensive, it will sink, and it does resist abrasions. The main thing here with fluorocarbon is the fact that it's almost invisible underwater, so the fish will not detect the line, so they won't be puzzled by the fact that there is something moving in front of them, and they will only see and focus on your bait. In terms of casting distance, it's average. Yes, it is thinner than monofilament, so you will have clearly better casting distance using fluorocarbon, and you will also have more line of fluorocarbon on your reel, being smaller diameter. To me, the king of all the lines is the braid, but I don't use braid 100%. I use all 3 lines at the same time, and I explain how. But braided line, how it goes, is also expensive, not as fluorocarbon, but it's clearly more expensive than the mono, and that's line float. So if you're, fishing top water lure, this is great. It has 0 stretch, and this is great because you will feel every little bite, or as soon as something happens to your lure, and you will also feel the action of your lure when you're using a crankbait or something. That vibration comes through the line very, very, very quickly. So as soon as something's off, like a fish is hitting it, you'll know it. And as you're setting the hook, because there's 0 stretch, it makes hook setting faster and easier with the braided line. You know, as the monofilament, that stretch will make your hook setting not as sharp and clean that if you were using braid. Downside is it's not very resistant to abrasions, and it's also very, very visible underwater. You know, it's opaque. It's not a translucent or transparent type of line. Oh yeah, another con of the braided is it has a tendency to slip on your reel. So if usually at the base of your reel you have like a harbor knot, but if you're pulling the line really, really hard, let's say you're landing a big fish, there's a possibility that the entire spool of line will just twist, and even if you're trying to reel in it, the line will just slip around the reel, and then you won't be able to land that fish. So how do I use all three lines to make sure that my system is like, foolproof? I will start the spooling using some monofilament, and the reason being is the monofilament will grip on the spool itself. Therefore, there's no slippage. If I'm landing a huge fish and that that it's pulling really, really hard, I know that the line is going to be very, very secure on the reel. That being said, you need to make sure that the pound tests that you're using are equivalent, meaning you don't want an 8-pound as backing and then use a 20-pound. That's not good, because if you reach the backing, it means your line now is 8-pound, and if you're reaching your backing, I can clearly tell you that 8-pound is not going to be sufficient. So you want something stronger. So you want 30 or 40-pound test as backing. Then you use a 30 or 20-pound test as braided line for the main that you attach to your reel. And so this is going to be the main bulk of your line. Then at the end you might want a 6 or 9 feet of a leader, and this is where I will use fluorocarbon. And the fluorocarbon being invisible, it makes the perfect line to present a lure or a bait to the fish, because the fish will only see what's in front of him, the lure, and he will not see the big line that is attached to it. So this is how I do my setup. And then again, I will use a line that is a little bit not as strong as a 20-pound test trillion. So for example, if I were using a 20-pound test braided line, then I will use maybe a 15-pound test as a leader. Okay, so you go from big to small. Right. So something I want to mention here quickly is I want to talk about the pound test rating of fishing lines. And it doesn't mean that you cannot catch a fish that is heavier than 8 pounds. That's not how it works. It means that you cannot lift an object that is more than 8 pounds. And knowing this, know that not all our lines are equal. So some will, an 8-pound test will be able to maybe lift 9 or 10 pounds, or in some other brands, your maximum is probably going to be 6 pounds. So, take this with a grain of salt. Give and take. What it means, though, it's how you're going to handle the fish that you caught. So, for example, if you hooked a 20-pound fish on an 8-pound test line, you're going to adapt a little bit how you're fighting that fish, where you won't be that super aggressive. You're going to give him a little bit more line. You want to tire him more than actually fight him, with tooth and nails. So you want to bring him slowly to you, give it constant pressure, and bring the fish to you. When you have your fishing line, also know that the weakest link is not going to be the line itself, but it's going to be the nut. And usually also nuts come with their rating, so some nuts have 90% strength rate, or some other 95 or 60, depending on the type of nut that you're using. They will have difference. And also know that braid line or monofilament or fluorocarbon have some level of variance in them, which makes some nuts are not as strong. Like for example, a nut that is going to be very strong on braid might not be as strong on fluorocarbon, for example. And fluorocarbon, one of the con, I don't remember if I mentioned it, but one of the con of fluorocarbon is like nuts tend to slip a little bit more than mono or braided line. And one quick way to test your nut is you can, when you're learning how to tie your knots with your fishing line, I encourage you to lift some of the objects you have around you and that you actually know how much they weigh. So if you have training weight at home, for example, you could lift some weights to see how strong are the combination of the nut that you have and the line. And you know, for example, here I made a test with my braid. So this braided line is braided 30, and I wasn't able to lift that 25-pound weight with this line. So, you know, is it the line? Is it my nut? I don't know. I need to make some tests to make sure, you know, what would be the best combination for this. All right. So let's discuss rods. So there are 4 things you need to consider when buying a rod, and they're the size of it, how long that rod should be, the type of material it needs to be, the type of power, and the type of action. You know, so about the size, what I would suggest you, size equates to casting distance, and to me, casting distance means a lot. You know, it allows you to fish. It gives you more possibility, okay? It increases your chances. So I'd therefore recommend you to get the longest rod that you can handle, that you can manage, okay? But a few things to keep in mind. A long rod is going to be harder to manage, you know, especially if it's one piece, it's going to be even harder, but you know, usually they will come in 2 pieces. You can take them down into 2 pieces, but you still need to consider that size in your backpack or in your car when you're moving around. And also know that a longer rod is going to be heavier, and it's, you know, if you're casting all day, you need to factor that in, you know, the weight of that rod. And if you're also a longer rod, will also be more cumbersome to cast. You know, sometimes when you're around a lake or on a river, you have branches, you have trees around you, and maybe it's not, you know, you won't be like super convenient. So in some area you want a shorter rod, in some other area where you can have, you know, if you're fishing in an open area, then yes, of course you can have like super long rod, but it's not always convenient. Yes, casting distance is great, and having a long rod is helpful, but in many instances it can be inconvenient to have such a long rod. So I would suggest, you know, go with the longest that you feel comfortable with. On an average, people will usually have a 6.5 or 7 foot rod for fishing. Most of my rods are 7. I have one that is 5 and 5, and I love it. It's my ultralight when I'm fishing small streams and river, and you know, I want it to be small and compact so I can, or even in the backpack, it's very, very light. And my longest in spin fishing, I'm not talking about fly fishing here. Fly fishing is another world, but my longest for spin fishing is 8.5. So the most common material you'll find for rods are graphite, fiberglass, or composite. A composite is a mix of fiberglass and graphite, and it will have the quality of each. You know, like composite have the durability of fiberglass and some of the sensitivity of graphite, but it will not beat one or the other. So it's a good compromise. Fiberglass are the most durable, but they're also not super sensitive, so you will not be connected to what's happening in the lure. And the graphite are the most sensitive of all the rods, but they're also very brittle. So using a graphite rod will make you, you know, real connected to what's happening in the water, and you know, you have that, all the small vibration will come through that rod really well. Fiberglass is the cheapest, graphite are most expensive, and the composite are a mix of the two. So it's for you to decide. If you're on a budget, you can go fiberglass, it's fine, you still catch fish. It's, you know, and later on, again, it's not, you're buying one rod for, you know, to start, but you're more likely to have more than just one rod down the road. So your first rod could easily be fiberglass. You can get composite. You have, you know, a better, in my opinion, a better product. Or you can go straight to graphite, but know that it might not be, you know, graphite being more brittle, accident could happen, okay? Let's talk about power and action. This confused a lot of angler, and I've been confused a lot, and maybe I'm still confused on it, but here what I understand in the concept of action and the concept of power for fishing rods. So let me use my ice fishing rod here just for a demonstration purpose. So the power refers to the stiffness of the entire rod, okay? You have light power, or even ultralight, and you have heavy power rod, or medium heavy, or medium. So what I would suggest you is to go with medium, and the reason for that is usually lighter rod are reserved to smaller fish, and heavier rod are for heavier fish. If you get a medium, you can cover a good range, you know, especially if you're not sure what type of fish are in the lakes or the river around your area. If you're not sure the type of fish you're gonna get, you are going to be exploring with that rod, and then later you can come back to the fishing shop and decide that, oh, you want this rod and this rod because you want to specialize in some sort of fishing. And so, for example, that's what I've done. So when I started, I had medium rods. And when I started discovering, you know, trouts and small strings and things like that, I decided to build kit specifically for a specific purpose. So here, this is baitcaster rod, by the way, but it still illustrates my point, where I discovered an area which lots of pikes, and I wanted to have a kit specific for big fish, you know, like pike and muskies and large walleye, and I built myself a heavy setup here, medium heavy setup with this rod. And when I decide to go trout fishing in small lake and stream, you know, in sometime dense area, I have here, this is a 5-foot long rod, which is ultralight also, you know, for fighting tiny small fishes, and lots of fun to fish with this little rod. So if you start medium, you will be able to do, you know, one or the other, and as you fish more and more, you want to specialize your gear as you're getting experience. That's for power. Now for action, the type of action. So this one is a fast action rod, and what that means is, it means the bending where, you know, if you apply pressure, it's mostly the tip of the rod that will bend, and the rest of the rod is going to stay straight, okay? If it was a moderate or even a slow action, that arc is going to be across the entire, like this place here wouldn't be straight, it would be like curved all the way. Like, let me illustrate that with another rod. If it was a slow or moderate, you have more bend across the entire rod, okay? And here the thinking of, you want slow or moderate action when you're fishing for smaller fish, you know, for trouts or panfish or things like that, even some walleye. And the heavier the fish, the faster the action you want. And the reason for that is fast action gives a very sharp hook setting, you know, very strong, and smaller fish will not handle that, you know, that strength of a hook setting. Therefore, you want a rod that's going to help you alleviate the you know, when you're hooking a fish, you're super excited and you're pulling out really hard. That bend will save the fish a little, like, you know, it will be less brutal on smaller fish, so you're less likely to actually tear their mouth as you're setting the hook. This is what the action types refers to. And again, here I would suggest you to go with a medium, or it's called moderate. Medium, moderate, yeah, both works. Moderate action. So medium power, moderate action. Okay. The last thing also, I think I almost forgot, and which is very important. So the very first thing that you need to do when you're in a store and you're looking for a fishing rod is to make sure that you're looking at a spinning rod and not a baitcaster rod. It could be confusing. So the spinning rod has a larger eyelet, while the baitcaster usually have a smaller eyelet. You can see this is a baitcaster, and this here is a spinning rod. Okay, so make sure that you're getting the right the right rod for the reel that you're buying. Another thing you also need to look for is written on the rod. Usually you will have the type of line that you need to get, you know, how the power, the pound test of the line. Usually it's going to be written here. So I don't know how visible this is going to be, but usually you will find the power rating, the pound test rating of the line required for this specific rod. And this is important because you do not want to have a line that is way stronger than the actual rod, because what's going to happen is the rod will break before the line. And I'd rather break my line, lose my lure at the end, than breaking the rods. You know, if your rod breaks, your day is over, you're going home. If I lose my, you know, some of the line, I cut the line, the line breaks, I lost my lure, it's okay, I'll just pull more line. I made a new knot, I attached some of the lure, and I can continue fishing. So the type of action and power is always going to be written on the rod. You know, here near the base, usually you have the logo, you have some specification, you have the pound test rating of the line that you need to pair with that line, and you know, the type of action it has and the type of power it has. You also have the length written up there, and oh yeah, very important, also the weight of the lure that you can use, you know, for that rod to be efficient. You cannot just attach whatever and just start throwing. Usually you'll have a limit. And so for example here, this is a medium heavy, and I can go with 3/8 to 1 ounce for a bait to cast. You know, if I were to look at my ultralight setting here, so for my ultralight here, what I can throw with this is, so for the line, this is rated 2 to 6 pound test line, so I shouldn't use a line that is has more pound test than this. And for the lures, the weight of the lure or the bait, it's 1/32 to 3/16 of an ounce. Okay, so that's okay, so let's talk about lures. So I really hope so far all the information that I've that I've been trying to pass has been well received and, you know, was comprehensible. This specific topic, the lures are a little bit more subjective, I will say, and a lot of this will only make sense to you when you're, you know, when you're gathering your own experience, your own success, your own failure, and you will adapt your tackle box, you know, how you organize your tackle box, the type of lures that you're going to use. So I am not going to show you all this as this is the pinnacle of you know, the fishing lure system or whatever. This is what works for me in my geographical location. So if you're in northern US, northern, you know, Quebec, East Coast, Northeast, these might, you know, work well for you. For any other area, West Coast, South, I don't know, maybe it could, maybe not. So I never been in, I never fished in these locations, so I can't speak for this area. But what I'm trying to cover here is a wide range of what's available, and I'm sure you will find similarities with your own regional specialties. There are so many variables in fishing, you know, what will make you successful in a specific day, and trying to replicate the same recipe another day and you will catch nothing. And this is, you know, there's a lot of guesswork, there's a lot of unknown in fishing, that this is what makes it interesting, because every time you hit the water you never know what's gonna happen. Okay, so maybe you're just unlucky that day, maybe there are no fish where you are, maybe you misread the time of year that the fish were spawning, or the upstream, or the downstream, or the, you know, shallow, or the deep. And usually when you fish, of course, you want to fish where you know fishes are present, because no matter what lure you use, if there are no fish in the water, you're not catching fish. Okay, so let's have a look at what's on the table. To me, those are just categories of lures that I use often, and I will explain a little bit how I use them for what, and then after I'll show you my tackle box, how things are organized. Okay, let's go on the table. Okay, so here on the table I have a couple of various categories of lures. And you know, I get some hard plastic, soft plastic, I have top water, I have spinner bait. To me, the most practical actually so far that I had was probably the spinner bait. And the main reason is there are no species of fish in Quebec that I did not catch with a spinner bait. Of course, with the exception of bottom feeders, okay? But all predatory type fish I have encountered all bite spinnerbait. Trout, bass, walleye, muskies, landlocked salmon, they all, you know, I caught each of the species on a spinnerbait. Therefore, in my tackle box, I have a wide range of spinnerbaits. I have small one, large one, and you know, lots of different colors. See this one, these colors? I think those are for Rasta fish. I'm kidding. No, but seriously, like to me, those are my main lure that I start fishing with, especially when I'm reaching a body of water and I'm not sure what fish are hiding there. I will start with the spinner bait and see what's there, and usually, you know, they will very often deliver. When I know exactly what I'm going for example, let's say if I'm going pike, and the area that I'm fishing has a lot of weeds or a lot of branch, I will try to use top water lure so I don't get snagged on the water. And for example, this frog imitation will just float on the water. So you cast it and then you will see it at a distance, that thing is going to be floating. And then you just retrieve your lure. And pikes love this, and I love it also because usually when you catch a fish, it's very, very spectacular. You see the fish coming to the surface, attacking, you know, creating that big splash, and you know the game is on. And it's very, very rewarding to see this happening while you're fishing. And another category that I really also like, especially for big game fish, you know, like muskies and pike, is to use jerkbait, like this one. Actually, jerkbait and crankbait. Okay, the main difference between jerkbait and crankbait, to me, they're very, very similar, and you know, they will catch the same type of fish. It's just that the crankbait usually will go deeper into the water. So when the water I'm fishing is not that deep, you know, maybe 6 foot of water or less, I will use the jerkbait. And when I'm fishing big, open, you know, big lake, deep lake, I will go with the crankbait. Okay, they're not cheap. If you're on a budget, what I would suggest you is to skip the jerk crankbait plugs family and go straight into soft bait. Okay, those are really cheap. You'll get like 10-15 for $8. They come in various sizes. You have large ones, small ones, various colors. And usually when you buy them, you also need to buy some accessories so you'll be able to mount them on your fishing line. You know, for example, when you're buying grub like this, you also need a jig head, you know, with the hook, the weight, the head, and to mount properly your so that's the main reason why they're cheap. But even buying accessories still makes them much more affordable than if you were to use regular jerkbait. Here's another one example. And usually at the back, when you're buying them, so that's this one was 10 pieces inside, and at the back you'll have suggestion on how to mount them. So, you know, while you're in the tackle store, turn the package around, have a look at how you can mount it, and ask the clerk there to actually give you, you know, the proper accessories that you'll need to mount your swim bait. Okay. And also another example here, I have like a worm imitation, and it works really well, to be honest. I stopped using live worm, and I don't need to run to I don't need to manage a cooler. I don't need to make sure my worms are alive, you know, depending on where I'm fishing. I just have these, super handy. They last longer on the hook, and they are catching fish. You know, fish can attack a block of wood, so sometimes we might be overcomplicating things a little bit. Another thing that I really like, and especially for trout or large trout, is using spoon. And I use the spoon the same way I use jerkbait. I will cast it and retrieve it, and it's the action of the spoon, the color of the spoon, that will make, you know, the vibration that the spoon is creating underwater that will attract the fish. So like to this, you do not need to add cut bait or any worms. You don't need to put anything on the hook. You just use this as is, and you retrieve it, and you will catch fish just with that. All right. So let's have a look at how I organize my tackle box. All the different, you know, all the categories of lure that, you know, you've seen previous on the previous topic, I usually carry them in a small compact bag like this. You may notice, if you're following me on this channel for a while, that I'm really enamored with everything that is molly. You know, the molly system, I love it, and you know, where I'm fishing or hunting or in my car, you know, in the Jeep, I use molly all day. Okay. What I like about this bag specifically is how I rig it to my kayak, and I will cover that at some point in a different video, but this is the main bag, and there's a lot of reason why I'm using this. And the main thing is, what I like is how I organize my tackle inside the bag. So the bag is just a vessel. The magic comes with using these plastic, these plano boxes here. So I have, let me bring them out. Okay, so the bag is almost empty. So all these were in that bag, and each one of these boxes have a purpose, or you know, a category of tackles. Okay, so for example, if I'm using this one, what I have here is the bucktail spinnerbait that I was talking earlier. So they're all into that one plano box. And when I know this is what I need, sometimes, you know, if I know exactly what I'm going to be fishing, I can leave that bag in the car and just pick one of these boxes, go on the water, and then, you know, I'll be fine. And or on a kayak, usually I'll just bring the whole bag with me. So each boxes have its purpose, you know. So I have my jerk bait when I'm, for example, this is my plano box when I'm after big fish, you know, like muskies, pike, or big walleye, big bass. This is usually what I'll be going to. I have one of these boxes, all my soft bait already mounted. So when I need like a, you know, one of these fish, you know, they're already mounted. They're here. I don't need to mount new ones. So I know exactly which box to get to. And here I have some, this one is great. I reach this one when I'm looking for small jerkbait. This is the one I will go to. And on the other side I have all my spoons for trout fishing. Okay. I'll explain how I use these spoons for trout. Or here, another category that I have is, this is just a box full of accessories. So I have weight, I have, well, this one is not supposed to be here. So I have weight, I have multiple, I don't know if it's, I have some hooks, I have some weight, I have some jig heads, some tiny spoons. So this is my accessory box. I have swivels also in this one. So to me, buying lures is just like, you know, it's one of the expenses that I have. And usually when I see something on sale, even if I don't need them immediately, but I know it's a good price, I will just stock up, and I'll have more than I actually need at hand, but at least I know I paid a good price. And the next time that I lose one, it's not going to pinch as much if I pay full price for my tackles. Okay, to set up the reel, you know, from scratch, let's say you just bought it. this is how it comes. What I like to start with, and it'll make sense in a second, but I like to add it to mount it to my rod. Okay. And I will start with the backing, which is going to be monofilament, and then my main line is going to be braid, and then we'll finish with a liter of fluorocarbon. So first thing is, open the arm, and we're going to tie the monofilament to the base of the reel here. Okay, let's try to make this. All right, so the arbor nut is just 2 overhand nut. Okay, the first one, you'll do it at the end of your tag end, like this. Okay, this one will act as a stopper. We'll make the second overhand nut over the main line, okay, using this tag end. So you're going over, and out. So this is clear somehow. All right, so we have the main line here, and we have our overhand nut here on this side with the tag end. So we had our stopper, the first overhand nut that we did, and we made a loop above the main line. So now all we need to do is to tighten it, and by giving a rocking motion, you will cinch both overhand nut at the base of your spool. Okay, so using a harbor nut, I'll secure the monofilament onto the base of the reel, and I will trim it short. Now that my line is secure on the harbor, I will close the arms. Okay, so next, now I have, I have a harbor nut on the monofilament here, and now I'm ready to start spooling the line around the reel. So it's easier when there's 2 people, because one person can hold the line, because you want some tension. You don't want the line to be loose around the reel, so you want it to be snug. You want some tension on that line. So what I'll do is I'll just drop this on the floor like so, and I will, with my 2 knees, I will hold the rod here, okay, and I'll take the line, and I don't know if it's visible, but okay, I'll hold the line quite high on the rod, and I will use my hand to put some tension on the line as I spool in. Okay, now I'm gonna hold the rod between my legs here, and I will start reading in the monofilament, just like this. And we don't need a lot, just a couple of twists, and I think that should be enough. So this is enough. Okay, I did a couple of twists here, and that's fine. So now I'm gonna cut the monofilament line, and we're going to tie the braided line to the monofilament. So let me recap where we are right now. So we did a harbor nut on the reel. I have a couple of twists of monofilament as backing on the reel, and the line is going up all the way to the eyelet, the first eyelet of the rod here, and I'm holding the tag end here in my other hand. Okay. Now I'm gonna put this on my lap. So I have my monofilament here, and I'm going to tie my braided line to my monofilament, and I'm gonna use an Albright nut, and I like Albrights are very easy and simple to do. So for the Albright, what I'll do is I'll just pinch my mono here, to give it some form. So my mono is doubled, okay, and I have a loop which I pinch, and I'm actually using the memory of, you know, the monofilament has lots of memory, so when you kink it, it has a tendency to stay kinked. And I'm gonna use this to begin my knot. So this is what I have right now, and now I'm going to use my braided line. Then I'm going to pass through the loop, up once on this side, and then I'll come back and then go over. Let me do this here. Over itself. Okay. Now I'm gonna pinch that side here, and what I'll do is I'll go over this line. I'll do like maybe 10-12 twists. Okay, so that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I want to make sure that I'm going through the loop in the same direction as my, so I'll need to come forward one more, and then through here. All right, now I'm gonna start gently pull. Pull, pull. It's getting nice. I'm gonna wet my finger, wet the nut. Okay, nice. And now I'm gonna hold the two, I'm gonna leave the two open line. I'm gonna use the main line, and I'm gonna cinch it really well. And this is how I tie my Albright nut. So you see, it's a very tiny nut, so the line fuse together really well. Now I'm gonna trim this end very close. And I need to trim also this end, but it's braided line are you cannot braided line are not easy to clip with clippers or scissors, and what I like best is actually a sharp knife to cut my braided line. So I will come really close to the and then cut it like this. Okay. Recap where we are. Monofilament as, one second, what's happening here? Okay, so monofilament, harbor nut on the reel, monofilament, couple of twists. Now I have my monofilament and my braided line are connected with an Albright nut. Now I'm gonna drop, same that we did with the monofilament, I'm going to drop my spool of braid here on the floor. And same, so you know, I leave the spool on the floor. Again, it's easier if there's two people. I'm gonna hold my line, press it against my rod, use my knees to hold the line, and I'm gonna start. So again, you don't want to put too much tension on the line. You just want, the line to be snug on the reel. Okay, you don't want it to be too loose either. So when you feel you have enough line, you can stop and cut. So to finish the reel setup, and this depends on where I'm going to fish. So I will use a 6, 7, or 9 feet leader. And this depends on if I'm going to fish murky water. I will not even bother using fluorocarbon leader. I will just use my braid line as is, and the fish will not see the line anyway. But if I am fishing clear water, the visibility is really, really high, then yes, I will mount a leader to my fishing line. All right. The way to connect the fluorocarbon leader to your main line is the same with the Albright nut, which is the same nut that we connected the monofilament to the braid line. Okay, so you can rewatch that part if you forgot how to do it. All right, so one quick tips here is when you're connecting your lure to your line, I like to use a swivel. Okay, and a swivel is something like this that has two purposes. The first one is it will, when whatever happening to your lure, this will twist freely, so your line is not going to twist. So that's the first purpose of the swivel. The second one is it makes attaching and detaching your lure easy. By just opening the bottom part of the swivel, you can quick attach and quickly detach fishing lures. So for example here, I've been fishing for maybe half hour with this jerkbait without any result. Well, I just need to retrieve it, quickly detach it, and then I can attach something else and I'm ready to go. Okay, so this is great. Now to secure the swivel, how do I tie my swivel to my line? Okay, so this is my leader here. What I'll do is I'll double the fluorocarbon line that I have, and you can kink it a little to help create that loop. So I have a double line, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass that loop through the ring of my swivel. Okay, just like this. So what I have right now is my double line going through the ring of my swivel. Now I'm making a simple overhand nut like this, and you can see that here I'm left with the loop, right? What I'll do is I'll take the swivel and I will make it go through the loop. All right, so swivel through the loop, and I'll slowly cinch and just tighten up things a little. I'm getting closer and closer. Now I'm gonna wet my fluorocarbon line with a little bit of saliva, and you pull, 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 pull until it's tight. All right, and now I just need to trim the end. With the fluorocarbon, I will usually leave maybe 1 centimeter of line after. I know fluorocarbon has a tendency to slip from time to time, and so I don't want to cut it too short, from the. But we should be good here. It's a good solid knot. So, all right. So now we have our leader, which is connected to the braid line with an Albright nut, and now I have a quick way to attach and detach fishing lure from my line. Okay, all the gear stuff, this is all covered. So you have your rod, your reel, everything is set up, you have your tackle box, you're all ready to hit the water. Great. Where do you start? Very good question. One thing I can say for sure is we will not fish randomly a body of water, whether it's a stream or a river or a lake. We're not going to canvas the entire area hoping randomly at some point to catch something. Nor we will wait at one place only and fish that spot until we catch something. No, you want to spend your time in the locations that are most likely to hold fish. Okay? I mean, that makes sense. So you can read a river or a stream or a lake and make an accurate guess on where the fish could be. Honestly, the answer is easy, and you'll find it so easy, you're like, why the hell is he making a chapter about this? But I think it's important, and actually this topic alone was something that prompted me to make this entire video. And I wanted to start a small video just on this specific topic, and then I got carried away. But enough talk, let's have a look at some example on how I approach a stream or a river or a lake and decide where to spend my time first. Okay, so let me walk through one of the experience I had. Like, for example, we were spending some vacation time last year here in this area. This is the Lac Saint-Jean area in Quebec, and we were spending some time around here. And the first thing I will do usually before even going around, I will scout the area with Google Map, and I will try to find from this view suitable spot for fishing. And I'm looking for two things: first, accessibility, and second, fish probability. And in the example of this river specifically, I could have launched my kayak and fish randomly all the way up the river, but that's not an efficient way to spend your time fishing. What you want to concentrate your effort where they are most likely to hold fish. I'm looking for a pool area that holds, that has some depth, but also that has a flow of oxygenated water. So here, this is white water here. We have like a waterfall. And what this tells me is this place most likely hold fish, opposed to this area where this is very narrow. There could be fish, of course, but I think here you will have more fish in this area because first, you have a lot of oxygenated water coming in. A lot of the forage fish will hang out in this area as well, and large fish usually will hang out here, getting like that fresh oxygenated water. They don't have to spend that much energy, and the food is coming to them as well. Fish, like most other creatures, they don't like to spend their energy for nothing. They're trying to be efficient, and hanging out in pools like this where they get food and fresh oxygenated water, this is what they really like. Okay, if I were to go up that river, I'll have a similar area like this, where actually I believe this area could even have more fish because of the waterfall here has much more white water. And yes, we do have a good pool here. The problem with this space here is I'm not sure if it's private property or if it's I'm not sure if I can just come in and cross. There are houses on both sides and fields, and those might be someone's it could be like a farmer property. So if I want to fish this area here, what I need to do is come up to the public space here and launch your kayak, and then you can go up the river to fish this area. See, actually there's like some boats here that I'm seeing up. I'm not sure, but it could be, or just rocks. So actually, yeah, this is a good spot. So you see the rock here, there is a parking lot. This is where I parked, and I went on this rock here to start fishing. So from the drone footage, now let's have a look at how I approach this area. Here I am here on my here I am on my rock. This is my gear, and I'm starting fishing. So you see The scale, it's, you know, it didn't look huge from Google Map, but you know, usually when you arrive on the spot, you realize how. So usually when you arrive from Google Maps, you realize how big things are. So I want you to pay attention to the current here. So you have a huge stream of water coming this way, and you have a smaller one coming here, and they're merging. All of them are merging into one. You know, into one single current. Here you have a little bit of turmoil on this side, so you have some ripple effect. If you look here in the middle, you have this sort of pool where the water seems to stand still, right? So you have like a flow coming from this side, flow coming from that side, and you have like a colliding. So this is a good place to start fishing, because usually the fish they don't want to spend their energy, so they will spend their time where water, you know, is still oxygenated but doesn't move as much, right? And when I started fishing, this is the first place I tried. I didn't catch anything. Then I was like, okay, fair enough, let's try something else. And then I casted in this area here. Okay, actually, can I clear? So this was the first part where I tried. I didn't catch anything. Second part I tried here. I didn't catch anything as well. I like this part because you still have that current here. Okay, so this is oxygenated water still coming in, still water, fish hang out. When food comes in, they catch. I didn't catch. The third spot I tried, and I was a bit afraid at the beginning, because here you don't see it from here, but you have like lots of branches and things here. I actually lost a good lure in this area, but this is where I landed a huge pike, and I was so happy. That made my day. We had dinner for that time. So on average, you know, I would maybe spending 10 minutes here because it's large. I spent maybe 5 minutes here because it was smaller, and I spent 3 minutes here. And that was it. That's how my day of fishing went. And you know, I landed one. I had a good fight. The fish was, I love pikefish. They're delicious, and that was enough for me. Okay. So the area I was highlighting, you know, the third place I was highlighting is here. Okay. So you see the currents coming this way, merging here. So this is a sim, and the sims are great place to fish. Okay, because you have like slow-moving water next to fast-moving water, and fish love to lurk in this area a lot. It just happened that day the fish was on the other side, but I'm sure if I were to come back to this spot, I'm sure at some point I'm gonna catch something here or catch something in the other area here. So what I like about this area here, you know, we have lots of rocks. You can see rocks here. You know, underwater structure are a great opportunity for fish to hide, and they love. You know, they don't want to be in just open water without cover, without anything. So fish will have a tendency to prefer area where you have cover. Could be vegetation, could be rocks, and often with the rocks also shields them from actual currents. You know, where they don't need to spend as much energy if they're hiding behind a rock, as opposed to if they were just standing in the middle of the current. Okay, I'm showing you another example so you can see that pattern that I was speaking about earlier in execution again. So here you have slow and fast moving water. You can see the same in the water, you know, with the white stuff that is floating. You can clearly see where the line is between the fast moving water and the slow moving water. So here, look at that. On my first cast, I actually have an attack right here. You saw that? This is great. You want to see this, because now you know that there are fishes in the area and you want to stick around. So knowing that there were fish around, I start canvassing the area, you know, trying to throw my lure left and right, or even on the other side of the current until I catch something. And in less than 3 minutes, I had my first fish. So this is the cast where I caught my first pike here, and now it's hooked, so now I'm fighting the fish. I was with friends, so they're waiting on the side with the net, and they were debating who's using the net to catch the fish. So anyway, recognize that pattern: fast-moving water, slow-moving water, and the story with that fish is I actually released it. I deemed it too small, and my friend caught it a few minutes later, and then we decided to keep it, and we actually had a nice hot pot with that fish. So cool. Let's move on. So when it comes to lake, fishing in lake offer a whole set of new challenges. The first thing you will need to do is to understand what does that bottom of the lake look like, okay? And you can have a look at bathymetry maps of lakes. And like in Quebec, a lot of them are actually available through to the public through various government websites. And you can also have that on a GPS. Some GPS map will show you the actual level of the lake. And what you're looking for when you're looking for a bathymetry map is high contrast in elevation. So what you want is a flat area that suddenly drop. And this usually, you have like deep water, shallow water, and that contrast of height, that contrast of depth, usually is a good indication of potential fish in this area. Forage fish and predator fish. Shallow water usually will give you weeds and cover for small forage fish, and when you have small forage fish, usually you'll have predator type fish nearby. And the predator type of fish really like depth, to hide. So let's say, assuming you don't have a kayak or a canoe, so you're on foot. Of course, you're limited to fishing the bank of that lake, right? And it offers a lot of challenge. First, accessibility is definitely a challenge. But what you will want to see, before you fish is actually you want good depth of water. Like having shallow water, usually it's not a good indication of fish. So let's say, for example, the bank of the lake you're at is very sandy. No weeds, nothing, very clear and very shallow, and a very slow slope, to depth. Usually that's not a good area to fish. So what you want is an area that is heavily accidented, with rocks and trees and a lot of depth, a lot of cover. This is what you're looking for, and this area will definitely will hold more fish than that pristine sandy slow slope of lake. Okay. Me, when I'm in a kayak, and for example, let's say I don't have a sonar, what I'll do is I'll just fish the bank. The reason being is all the small insects, the larvae, all these things are near the shore. They are falling from the trees, and they're feeds and they're food source for small fish. And again, when there's small fishes, there is bigger fish. So therefore, what I'll do is I will set myself 20 feet away from the shoreline on the kayak, and I will cast my line toward the shore and retrieve my bait or whatever I'm casting, right? And so I have a couple of examples here. This is a lake I never fished in my life ever before, and that specific day I didn't have my sonar. So a sonar is a great tool. It is expensive. Do you need one? No, not really. But it does help with your research. And on that day I was lucky because the wind was pushing me parallel to the shoreline. So I was just, I would let the wind move me, and I will just cast and canvassing the shoreline of this specifically. And I caught a couple of pikes that day, as shown in these videos. Okay. Ideally, you will fish the same area over and over and over again, and you will, at some point, you'll know what works, what doesn't work. Okay. So let's have a look at a bathymetry map, actually. Well, you have various places online where you can find those bathymetry maps for the lake you want to fish. I happen to have one here. I usually, just look online, or my sonar has a GPS, and usually I will have this information also on the GPS. But I think, just for demonstration purpose, this serves my purpose really well. So let me get closer here. This is one of the lakes in Quebec where me and my father-in-law used to fish for lake trout. So what you want to look for on the bathymetry, where you want to spend some time, is area of contrast. Okay, so you can see here that 80, this is pretty deep, and you see the contrast with the shore is very short. So that this is a very, very, very steep slope, and this is a good place to start fishing. Another area that I can recommend also based on this map is here. You see the sharp contrast, so it's like a smooth, like for example here, I will avoid this place here. See how smooth it is? I can tell you not much is happening in this area. Same here, not much. But if I were to look a little bit upward, here, it has a good contrast. So this is a place worth spending some time. Contrast, you want contrast in depth. And this is a good place. This here is a good place. You have 80 next to, almost nothing. Avoid smooth area like this. So here, I can tell you, this is more like sandy type beach. Very smooth curve toward, the bottom. Usually places like this also, with some islands have some elevation variations. So this also is worth exploring. Here, this is great. This place is like 120 next to 10 meters. Yeah, 120 meters next to 10 meters in such a short span. So this is also a great place to start. All right, so this is a bathymetry maps, and that's how. That's one way of finding good places to fish. All right, so let's talk about accessories for a second. There's a lot of thousands of fishing accessories available out there in stores, and a lot of them are marketing gimmicks, of course. But I believe some of them are kind of essential, or maybe not essential, but at least important. Okay. And the first thing here, I have some shades, and you want your shades to be polarized. And polarized shades will give you the ability to see through water, almost like a superpower. It will filter out reflections from the water, and first protect your eye from the UVs, which is great. But it will filter out some reflection on the water, and you'll be able to see through the water in front of you. And you know what? 90% of it is finding the fish. If you can see the fish, then you can cast accurately. And if you can cast accurately, only then you will land your fish. Okay? So shades, polarized shades, really important. Okay. The second thing maybe I can mention here quickly, it could be intimidating for people to, when you start to manipulate the fish that you're catching, and having dorsal spine or things that could, sharp and pointy in the scale, and yuck. Yeah, it's not for everyone. Use the gloves. This is like a heavy rubber glove. This is soft for the fish scale or skin. It will give you confidence to handle the fish in a more humane way. So that's why I recommend wearing gloves if you're yucked out by fishes. Along in the same vein, I also recommend you a good pair of pliers, and this will help you remove the hook from the mouth, again in a human manner. Especially if you're catching and releasing fish, you want to be gentle as possible, and this will give you the ability to actually go deep into the mouth of the fish and remove the hook in a humane way. To cut your line, if you have mono, you might want to have like a clipper like this. Braided line usually doesn't work well with clippers, so you'll want like a sharp knife. Okay. Another item that I deem essential is having nets, and I would recommend you to have a rubber type of net, because fish love their rubber net. I can tell you this. It's much gentler, especially if you're trout fishing, you know, like salmonid, and you're again doing catch and release. This prevents injuries to the fish skin. All right, and you have this type also. This is much bigger. I love this for small trout, and usually when I'm pike fishing or walleye, I will use something more like this. Okay, and the advantage of having larger holes in your net is your hooks doesn't get snagged as much. You know, like this is tiny holes, and you might get your hook snagged in them more frequently than this sort of and if your fish can go through one of these holes, well, you don't even need a net. For the next the next thing that I have here on my side is all about accessibility. And to me, accessibility is key. You know, like I recommend a longer rod so you can cast further. This is why I'm recommending having an open-faced reel so you can cast long. And another way also to increase your reach is by wearing some, you know, like boots, for example. You know, you can step in the water up to a certain level, and maybe 1 foot of water is just enough for you to get that lure just exactly where you want it. And this is a great it's a cool accessories to have with you. So this is basic level. You can increase even more your reach. What I would recommend you is to get waders. And let me show you my waders. So those are my waders here. So the socks here are neoprene waders. So you know you get inside of this, you will stay dry all day. And with the waders, you also need a good pair of boots. Okay, and the boots will prevent two things. First, the boots will prevent you from slipping, because usually you have like a good grip system under the sole here. Here I have like a metal cleat, and I can stand on rocks and thing underwater so it doesn't slip. And the second thing is you want your boots to be rigid. Okay, because when you're walking underwater up to a certain height, the pressure at the feet is, you know, quite high, and if your boots are too flexible, they will crush your feet and it's gonna hurt. So I recommend you to have, like, you know, a good rigid pair of boots that goes with your waders if this is the route that you go. So these are the two extremes, you know, from the boots to the waders, but you also have in between. I don't have any here with me. This one goes all the way up to the chest, and I can go all the way up in the water to I don't recommend it, but you can. And you also have mid-thighs wader, or like, you know, I don't know how they call what's the proper name for them, but you have everything in between the full chest wader all the way up to the rain boots. Okay, so you can have a look into these things, and this is just to give you more accessibility. In the previous chapter, I covered how you can find fish in the water, but sometimes when you're on the bank and you're seeing the nice area, you know, the nice area is on the other side, and you're trying to cast and you cannot reach, and you're actually seeing fish jumping on the surface over there, but you are unable to reach them. It's highly frustrating. Of course, the ultimate way to reach any places is to have a canoe or a kayak. And, you know, if you're already a kayaker or a canoeist, then that's fine. This is great, you know, just use it. But getting into kayaking or canoeing plus fishing could be overwhelming. So baby steps, one at a time. So do either kayak and canoeing first, then get into fishing, or do some fishing and then into canoeing, kayaking. But if you want to do both at the same time, it's different. Like kayaking and canoeing is a whole new game, and it's there's lots of accessories. It's going to be overwhelming for your wallet and for yourself. All right, I think that sums it all. Now I want to talk about something very, very important before I wrapped this video. This is my greatest production ever so far. And so if you're one of the few that watched this video from the beginning all the way up to the end, man, you're a trooper, and I want to hear about you. I want you to leave me a comment in the section below. I want to know who you are, who's gonna watch that an hour and plus video on fishing. I definitely want to hear about you. Thank you. And now, final words, parting words. What I want to tell you is, when I've been out there, I've seen my fair share of unsportsmanship. Okay, I've seen people not respecting nature. I've seen people doing stuff that are unspeakable. What I would like people, learning fishing and all this is great, but also want them to come into fishing with a good sportsmanship attitude. Okay, respect the rules and regulation. Please be part of the conservation effort. If catch and release is great. You can have fun and all that. It's not all that there is to it. Sometimes it's not even better to release the fish, because the way we're handling them, the risk of death after release is still fairly high. So there are ways you can help improve the survival rate of the fish that you catch if you're releasing them back. For example, crushing the barb on your hook is a great way to do so. You see on my, and this is a resolution that I took recently, I haven't done it to my gear yet, but for example, on my jerkbait, I'm going to replace the treble hook by a single hook, and probably also remove the barb of these hooks. Last year I was fishing, and I was fly fishing, and I caught a tiny fish. And I was like, no, that's not the fish that I wanted to catch, and it broke my heart, really. To see that little fish like bleeding by its gill. I tried to release it, but I don't think it's gonna make it, and so I named that fish Wanda. Only a few of you will catch that joke. And for Wanda, I decided to rethink my whole approach about fishing, catch and release. And of course, I'm still gonna catch and cook some of the fishes that I'm catching. I'm not saying I'm I turned 100% catch release guy, no, but I want to prevent as much as possible when I'm catching a fish, especially when it's the wrong fish that I was after. Sometimes when the fish is too small, or I will not keep a fish that is not sufficient for dinner, for example. Okay, so if it's just a tiny fish and it's just going to be like 2 bites for me, there's no point in keeping that fish. But I hope that the way I cut it allows me to actually release the fish. All right, and for example, about the treble hook on jerkbait, I think they're overkill in the sense where you will catch a pike in your net, the pike will will do its things, and then you will have hooks on the upper head of the fish or on the belly. So it's like it just increases injuries to the fish that are unnecessary, especially if you wanted to release that fish. So to me, treble hook are from now on a no-go. Except on my spinnerbait, but I will remove the because they're only on the spinnerbait. There's only one treble hook, and I will crush the barb on this. And you could be worried about losing fish, if you crush the barb. I believe if you have a good technique, if you keep a good tension on the line, your success rate will not drop as much as if you kept the barb. Okay. In some area where for salmon fishing, for example, you need to crush the barb. It's like you cannot fish for salmon if your barbs are not crushed, and it's people are still catching salmons. So sportsmanship. I want you to have impeccable ethic when you're out there. I want you to go over the rules and regulation of your province or state, wherever you are, and follow them, okay? And it's not because you have a quota of 15 fish for the day that you have to catch 15 fish for the day. You know, catch what you need and leave the rest alone. Respect nature. When you're losing your lure or line, retrieve as much as possible of your line. Do your due diligence to retrieve the lure. You know, do everything you can before like forfeiting a lure to the environment. Trash, man. No. I've seen this, and the people who are doing this are idiots, and I'm not even, you know, they are idiots. I'm not afraid to say it. They are idiots. Okay. So, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you liked it after an hour and something, I think I deserve a little thumbs up, I think, and maybe even your subscription to my channel. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching this, and I'll see you in the next video. And good luck on the water. See ya.